This is Tom and Paula Grace from Light of Christ Radio with a story from our series on the book of Esther entitled For Such a Time as This.
You're welcome to watch this video simply for the story, or you can use it as the basis of a small group study.
The small group study instructions are below the video in the More section.
Today, we continue our series For Such a Time as This, and we look at Esther 2 and 3 and Dastardly Plots.
Well, Paula, as we begin our conversation today, we want to look at the context of our story.
So our story takes place during the time of the Persian Empire in the reign of King Xerxes.
Mordecai and Esther are cousins and descendants of Jewish exiles living in the capital city of Persia.
And King Xerxes' wife Vashti had disobeyed a command, so the king banished her from his presence. But afterwards, he wanted another queen.
Well, his advisors suggested a type of beauty contest for the next queen, and the king agreed. Esther was part of this contest and pleased the king so much that he made her queen.
Now, the king did not know Esther was Jewish, as she had kept her ethnicity secret at Mordecai's request, which brings us to a story from the Word of God.
Even after all the young women had been transferred to the second harem and Mordecai had become a palace official, Esther continued to keep her family background and nationality a secret. She was still following Mordecai's directions just as she did when she lived in his home.
One day, as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gates, two of the king's eunuchs, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at the king and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot and gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai credit for the report. And when an investigation was made and Mordecai's story was found to be true, the two men were impaled on a sharpened pole. And this was all recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes' reign.
Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, the Agagite, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by. For so the king had commanded, but Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect.
Then the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why are you disobeying the king's command?" They spoke to him daily, but he refused to comply with the order. So they spoke to Haman about this to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct, since Mordecai had told them he was a Jew.
When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. He had learned of Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes.
So in the month of April, lots were cast in Haman's presence. The lots were called Purim, to determine the best day and month to take action. And the day selected was March 7th, nearly a year later.
Then Haman approached King Xerxes and said, "There is a certain race of people scattered through all the provinces of your empire who keep to themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws differ from those of other people, and they refuse to obey the king's laws. So it is not in the king's interest to let them live. If it please the king, issue a decree that they be destroyed, and I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury."
The king agreed, confirming his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to Haman, the enemy of the Jews. The king said, "The money and the people are both yours to do with as you see fit."
So, on April 17th, the king's secretaries were summoned, and the decree was written exactly as Haman dictated. It was sent to the king's highest officers, the governors of the respective provinces, and the nobles of each provinces in their own scripts and languages. The decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the king's signet ring.
Dispatches were sent by swift messenger into all the provinces of the empire, giving the order that all Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated on a single day. This was scheduled to happen on March 7th of the next year. The property of the Jews would be given to those who killed them.
A copy of this decree was to be issued as law in every province and proclaimed to all peoples, so that they would be ready to do their duty on the appointed day. At the king's command, the decree went out by swift messengers and was also proclaimed in the fortress of Susa.
Then the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa fell into confusion. This is a story from the Word of God.
If you are using this video for a small group application, after you've watched this video, try retelling the story from what you've heard.
Then read the text. Discussion questions are below the video in the More section.
We hope you'll discover something from this story to apply to your everyday life.
May you be blessed.